and welcome to VIBEZ Daily. This is a daily devotional curated by VIBEZ Church to help you practice the way of Jesus and be all that God has called you to be. You have joined us for our year-long series titled Devoted. Acts 2:42 tells us that the followers of Jesus were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. This podcast was created to provide context and commentary for what you read each day. Just before our friends begin discussing today's reading, we want to invite you not only for fellowship, but for prayer as well. We have created the VIBE Daily Chat Group to offer you fellowship and a community where you can state your observations, ask questions about the reading or the podcast. You can join us by downloading the VIBEZ Church app in your favorite app store. Click Join the Conversation and join us today. And finally, we hope that you can join us for prayer. Prayer happens Monday through Friday, and more information on that can be found on the VIBEZ Church app under prayer. Now, let's begin our conversation on today's reading.
All right, welcome back to the VIBEZ Daily Podcast, our devoted series. It is day 45, and we are continuing here through Numbers. I am back and again joined by my wife, Victoria, and my friend, Shameeka, as we continue in this discussion. So I'm excited to get into Numbers 11. So far, it's been a lot of like censuses and, maybe some laws here and there. But this is where I had to repent because Numbers starts to get real good and real interesting here. And I think coming into it, I always thought Numbers was a little bit of a bore. But it really starts here in chapter 11. The Israelites start complaining. They kind of start this really habit of complaining about stuff. Specifically, anything that jumped out to you guys in these first couple complaints, kind of just about some hardship and also just about the food they were eating. We'll get into another example of the food here later, but anything that jumped out to you guys at the beginning of chapter 11?
Yeah, I did think it was interesting that, and again, I gotta understand where they're coming from because I'm assuming they're still eating manna, the same thing. Where I don't even know how many years we're in, but we know they've at least been there for 2 years. But it's the way that they complain. I think at this point they should know by now that if you want something, ask the Lord.
Right.
Like if there's something that you're desiring, like, present it to the Lord, present it to Moses to present to the Lord. And so I just don't like how their immediate response was to grumble and then to grumble at Moses, because they've shown and we've seen in the history of them that, like, no, you're capable of crying out to the Lord and asking him for things. And so we're starting to see this continuation of this pattern of, like, things are getting hard, which, I mean, they wanted meat. Like, they literally wanted meat. But for that to be something that will then cause them to even reminisce about Egypt and be like, we were better off there. And I don't think they said it in this case, but we'll see, like, just their heart of, like, Egypt was better. I was living good. I was eating good. I had all my chicken, shrimp, steak, all of this. And I want it. And so, that was just kind of the thing that stuck out to me. It's like, y'all still not getting it.
Yeah, no, it is. It's right there in verse 5, right? Remember the free fish we ate in Egypt, along with the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and garlic. But now our appetite is gone. There's nothing to look at but this manna.
This manna. The funny thing, they say it was free. Like, it wasn't free. I was slaves. Like,
right.
With the cost. Like, did y'all forget? Y'all wasn't just out here just living and big chilling. Like, y'all had whips and chains on your backs.
I was working for that food.
You was working for that food. Like,
Right.
and I think it was really interesting. Like you said, like, the Lord, he was like not tolerating it.
No.
Like, the fact that they started complaining and grumbling in verse 1, and his anger was kindled, and all of a sudden fire. Like,
Yes.
it just makes me really see God, like, okay, he does not tolerate the grumbling and the
For
complaining,
sure.
because to him, as we keep on seeing, that it is like just a straight like denial of the Lord and rejection of the Lord.
Yes.
Right? Like you said, all this manna even made me think about when Nakia was here. She was like, all this manna. Like, it was just like the manna wasn't good enough. Like
Right.
this divine bread from heaven,
Which was a miracle.
which was delicious, to taste like honey, and
Yes.
stuff, right?
Yes.
Like, but
Yeah,
it wasn't
making
good
cakes and
enough,
stuff
right?
like that.
Yeah.
But I do get, like you said, I get it. You eat the same thing every day for 2 years, right?
Mhm.
But the heart posture, just ask.
Yeah.
Like, just ask your father, like, hey, Father, like, we used to have some really nice fish.
Mhm.
And, like, is there a river or a stream that you can bring us to or something? Like, some fish? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you see that even in this, because like in this passage, that we see this difference between like complaining and lamenting.
Yes.
Right? Like,
For sure.
because God can handle the like, God, this is hard and I'm
Mhm.
struggling. Can you help?
Mhm.
Right? Versus the like grumble, complain, and pointing of fingers and the like lack of gratitude
Yes.
expressed, right? Because Moses then goes and laments to God about how the people
Right.
are complaining to him, right?
They're
Like,
eating the same stuff.
right.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I can't carry this burden of their complaints. So like I need some help, right?
Mhm.
And I think he goes to it and God gives him that, right? Like look at the difference between the way God responds to Moses
Right.
when he complains or laments to God versus the way he responds to the people when they complain.
Yeah.
Because he does. Then we get like 16 on, like they kind of gives this piece where he gives them these 70 elders and he
Yeah.
anoints them. He spreads his spirit out among them, which was just really cool. But like he responds to that, the lament differently than he responds to the complaint.
That's
And
good.
I think we see that there.
Yeah.
And because his lament is not directed towards like, God, you're not doing enough.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're not doing enough for me. It's just more so like, God, help. Like
Yeah.
I need your help.
I like that, especially because it doesn't disregard what God had done for them.
Right.
It's like, man, y'all just celebrated the Passover. There's these different things in place so that you guys can remember that he took you out and you guys still are on a journey of the promised land. But it's like, again, as soon as the grumbling happens, it's like they're like their heart and their language is take us back. Like they're trying to figure out how they can get back. We should have stayed there, instead of realizing just the magnitude of what the Lord did for them. So yeah.
Yeah. And they trying to go back and die in Egypt. And Moses is like, Lord, you just kill me right here. Like,
Right.
you take
If you
me out.
find favor with me, I love
Yes.
it. Kill me now, right?
Yeah.
If I have found favor, it says literally, please kill me right now if I have found favor with you.
Right.
Like,
That's funny. Which is also it's also funny because obviously he's favored by the Lord.
yeah.
So it was kind of like a saying that it was almost like he tried to put him in a corner of like,
Right.
I'm favored, so kill me. But God's like, no, it ain't your time to die.
Yeah. Yeah, so he does, like, God answers Moses by anointing these 70 elders, which was a very interesting kind of passage there.
Yeah.
Again, God spreads his spirit out among them. I won't rush this. Anything that just jumped out to you guys in that, like, because again, there's a lot of verses there that kind of where God gives these elders. Anything that you guys thought was interesting in the way that God anointed them.
Yeah, it reminded me of the Pentecost.
It
like
did.
Day of Pentecost, which is mind blowing because had we not been reading this together, this is my first time reading the Bible in a year and reading it, from start to finish. Like I always look at those monumental moments, like the Day of Pentecost, as like the only time that something like that has happened. And it's like we get to see these like glimpses in the Old Testament of like God doing these things before that even happened. And this was a perfect example of that. Like the fact that his spirit rested on them, and then as a result they were prophesying.
Right.
Yes.
Like I was like, okay,
Even
this
the ones
is
that like stayed back that didn't even make it were still prophesying.
That
is
part.
right. So they were just able to see God's power in a whole new way. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that was a part for sure when they the two that stayed back in the camp and they still were prophesying. I was like, this looks like Acts.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love Moses not necessarily trying to take credit for anything, right? Just kind of saying like, don't be mad if they prophesy. Because
Right.
again, they're speaking on behalf of the Lord, which is what it means to
Right.
prophesy, right?
Right.
Like if God want to use them in the camp to speak, like let the Lord use them. Like
Yeah.
I'm not mad. Like don't
Yeah.
be jealous on my part, right? Is what I think he says in 29. Like, are you jealous on my account?
Right.
Like if only all the Lord's people were prophets, and the Lord replaced His Spirit on them. Like shoot, I wish everybody had the Spirit of the Lord.
Right.
Could do this. And so again, back to that humility that we've kind of talked through. I love seeing that there.
But right in between those two, where the Lord tells him that he was going to put the Spirit on them, and then that actually occurring, there's this encounter between God and Moses that I found really interesting, because generally Moses does not challenge or question what the Lord says he can and will do, or what he's about to do.
Yeah.
But here, even in verse 21, when the Lord tells him that, like, they're gonna eat meat for like a whole month, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like, the people among who I am number 600,000 on foot, and you said I'm giving them meat and they may eat a whole month. Like, he's kind of like questioning, like, Lord, what? Like, you see all these people? What are you talking about?
God's answer was so good.
And he was like, it's the Lord's hand, not short-handed. What's your version say?
Is the Lord's arm weak?
Yeah.
I like that even better. But yeah, I love it that it was just, but to your point though, like, he still has so much favor, and we also know that, like, his heart generally is like pure in this, and so it could have even been like a for real question, like, really, Lord? Like, what you about to do? Like, you know?
Like, did you hear me clearly in what what they were complaining about?
Am I hearing you correctly? That you're going to give all these people? And so even the Lord was just like, his response to him was just like, well, just, you see.
Yeah.
Like, see if my word will come true or not.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's good.
Well, I thought something that stuck out to me that was interesting is that, you know, God gives them what they grumbled about. He gave them the meat, and it was a situation where he's like, y'all gonna have so much meat, y'all gonna be sick of it, kind of thing. And then in verse 33, we see where, like, the Lord sent a severe plague on them, like, because his anger burned up against them. And my version says, but while the meat was still between their teeth,
Stuck in their teeth.
and before it could be consumed, like, a plague had already hit them. And so what that really showed to me was that, like, although the Lord gave them what they wanted, he still judged them off of their heart and their reaction, because he's coached them. He said so many times, like, you know, because this is not the first time that they've alluded to, like, you know, let's go back to Egypt, I'd rather be slaves, right? Like, he's already dealt with them on this subject plenty of times. And so I just see him still being a just God as a result of that.
Yeah. And I think it was really interesting, like you said, that, like, they gathered a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it says the people rose all day and all night and all the next, and they was gathering quail that whole time. So it's like they were just out here gathering as much as they can, as if the Lord couldn't provide the next day, right? Or as if it wasn't enough. And so I see this gluttony.
Yeah.
I mean, because even when they first mentioned these people who had this craving, it was like in verse 4, it was like, no, the rabble that was among them had a strong craving. And it's just like this desire to fulfill themselves in this craving. And they just went overboard. Like, they just took it too far. Like, I'm sure they wasn't up early doing all this extra stuff for the Lord, but for this quail, they're up, you know, a day and a half doing it. And so I think it was a gluttony. But then I also looked up and saw that the name of this place, Kibroth Hattava, or I'm probably butchering it, but it means graves of craving. And so I'm just like, that it was to their death, right? Like, some of the things that they craved for, like, it felt like, it was like, is this food poisoning? It was like instant food poisoning, like, for sure, like plague. So I think it was just interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's a caution against just those things we crave or desire in general in life, right? And that, like, there are times in which God's gonna just give you what you ask for. Like, even though it's not good for you.
Right.
Of the cost.
If he's just gonna allow you, it's like, all right, have it your way. And I think it's just a caution about those things that are flesh desires, right? And realizing that those don't always come from healthy places.
Into, I mean, and we can move past it, but I felt like this also brought me back to that moment where God had literally told them, like, hey, I'm going to provide for you each day. Like, make sure you rest on the Sabbath. And, like, that greed was, like, something where some of them even went out and was trying to look for the manna or, like, whatever he was presenting to them at that time. And so we don't know if any of those gatherings took place on the Sabbath, but I can feel like I can read this and know that like, oh, if it landed on a Sabbath, they would have been out there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so more drama ensues in chapter 12. Miriam and Aaron, Moses' brother and sister, start to get a little upset with him over something silly, over kind of who he married.
Yeah.
A Cushite woman, which I think is a little challenging for us as people of color, because that meant she was a black woman.
Yeah.
They don't really like that he married her, and it causes them to cause some drama, and Miriam kind of gets impacted by it. What you guys see here in chapter 12? You guys thought was interesting?
Well, I thought it was interesting because to me, I did think it was a big deal, kind of. Like the Lord just laid out all these laws that the priests were supposed to marry these certain women, these Israelite women, and he's already, married a Midianite woman, which, in my opinion, that wasn't really his fault, right? Like he was fleeing. But like here, you're surrounded by millions of women, millions of Israelite women, right? And to know that like Moses was even like above the priest in some way because he was the one who was anointing them, to feel like he wasn't subject to some of that same like, I don't know, honor or whatever, or that he didn't have to follow the rules per se, did stand out to me because I was just like, of all the Israelite women, you did, right? And so that was interesting. But as the conversation was happening, one thing that really jumped out to me though was that the Lord was listening.
Yeah.
And so it just reminds me the Lord's always watching and the Lord's always listening. Like, because they're speaking and it's like, and the Lord heard it, right? And so I think it was just interesting that like all of a sudden the Lord shows up and then speaks on Moses' behalf.
Yeah. And I felt like God really was like setting a tone for them to like, no, you have to put some respect on his name. Like you need to be respecting Moses and speaking highly of him, even in private. And I think that was important because we do know that how easy it was to influence the Israelites to do the same, to grumble against Moses or to be, just have that same mindset. And so for them, like, Miriam is a prophet. Like, she's still a prophetess. And, Aaron, we already know his role and how he's a priest. And these are people of standard and honor that are not honoring Moses in this conversation. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe the Lord wouldn't have been as angry if they would have had the conversation with Moses himself. But it was gossiping. They were like talking behind his back. For sure. And so just to see God's anger towards them, he, sets them straight, and to the point where Miriam gets leprosy. And she has to be like quarantined away. And I wonder if she was the one who got it because she was the one kind of stirring the pot. And she needed to be sent away so that just to clear the air, but also like not have her still planting seeds or trying to cause division between them.
Yeah. You also wonder if Aaron probably has some favor because he's consecrated for the work of the Lord, that like, you can't really get him leprosy. I mean, I guess he could, but that perhaps he didn't carry it that way. But yeah, I mean, again, it's the motivation one way or the other is misplaced, right? As far as kind of whatever caused them to do that. Because even if their issue is intermarrying, and we don't really get a hint on when he marries his Cushite woman, right? So we don't know how long he's been married to her, specifically, if this is like a recent marriage or this is something that happened before the Exodus, because they've only been in the wilderness 2 years, so that we don't see a sign here they got married while they're in the wilderness. So but either way, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, what comes out of it is their jealousy for him, right? And this like, we can speak to the Lord as well, on his behalf. And so, I think it's clear no matter what they were doing, their motivation in their heart was in the wrong place. So.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Yeah. Well, 13 and 14, we can really kind of take together. It's a very interesting account that, like, again, a lot of people, if you've read the Bible before, even if just kind of skimmed through it, it's an account that's kind of referred to often. This is how the Israelites ended up stuck in the wilderness for 40 years, right? Is what kind of happens here in 13 and 14. So they're sent, a few spies are sent to go see Canaan, which is the land that God has promised them. And from that, man, they come back with a report that causes some division within the camp and some other things. So let's just kind of take this whole account here as a whole. Some of the things you guys thought was interesting as these spies are sent to see Canaan, and the report that they bring back and how Israel responds to it. So let's kind of take a big picture. Some of the thoughts you guys saw in 13 and 14.
One that stuck out to me was the moment where Moses renamed Joshua, like his name was Hoshea, and then he changed it to Joshua, and we know that Joshua is a monumental person, but even the meaning behind it, Hoshea, if I'm saying it right, means salvation, but then Joshua means God is deliverance, or God, is salvation. And so I just thought that was so significant and unique that he gave him a new name, whereas before we saw God giving people new names. But Moses takes charge in giving Joshua a new name, but making sure God was in it, that God is the God who delivers. And so that stuck out to me.
Yeah. I once again just sticking out this tribe of Judah. Caleb was holding it down. You look at me.
Yep.
I was gonna ask. I was like, guess what tribe Caleb from?
Caleb
That's where he's from.
He's holding it down.
Judah's holding it down.
But I love though that when they sent them out, it wasn't for the purpose of seeing if they could conquer it. Like they was like, just go look at the land, just bring. And I feel like the Lord was more so like, just
get a little glimpse of what I
see. Like, go check out the fruit, go check the land. Isn't it indeed a land, right? That is bountiful.
Yeah.
Right.
And the way that they came back was timid and afraid.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not why I showed you this. And this is sometimes why the Lord probably doesn't show us stuff. It's like, I wasn't showing you so that you can get scared as if I wasn't going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I was showing you so you could see how good and pleasing it is. And so I think they missed the whole purpose of their mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. You're so right. Like, isn't that just, it's just like us, right? Like, where God is like, man, this is what I'm trying to do with you and through you. And He gives us vision and like all these things that's going before us. And all we focus on is like, God, what does that mean for my family? Or what does that mean for the job I have? Or what does that mean for, this or that? Like, we just see the negative potential.
That's too big.
That's too big. Or, I don't know, I can't handle that. Or, nobody's going to listen to me. Or like, I mean, it's how we take it. He's trying to show us all the potential that He has for us. And so often all we end up stuck on is, nah, God, that's too big. That's too much. Yeah.
I really appreciate Caleb's faith in that. Like, it was crazy how things had switched up, because at first when they were given a report, like, they were saying good things about the land. Like, man, it is, like, it really is a land flowing of milk and honey. Like, it got all these things. And it seemed like as soon as Caleb stepped up in faith, like, let's go conquer it. Like, we got this. We can do this. It was like they started kind of backpedaling, and like, now we're pointing out all these other things. Like, nah, like, we don't want to go there. They even spoke of the Nephilim that they saw, which we spoke about them before in the previous tense. So for them, they're like, listen, they got giants up in here. They're stronger than us and all this. And we're the ones reading it in our mind like, y'all got armies. Like, y'all are the ones that people are afraid of. So yeah, I thought that was interesting, just seeing them backtrack, and also the significance of the 40 days that they spent there. I feel like that keeps coming up, where it's like 40 days seem to be a significant amount of time, and I was thinking that they were just going to go and kind of come right back. I don't know how far it was, but they spent a lot of time there, so they were able to observe a lot. That reminded me of the time that Moses spent with the Lord on the mountain. But like they were pretty settled and able to really see this, and you would think that, again, like, you just would hope that would be enough for them to, like, again, see all the goodness of what the Lord is bringing them, be encouraged, and they had the opportunity to come back and encourage a whole community.
Right.
And it just didn't turn out that way.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting, like you said, like there's all these people here, that they witness in this land. But these are the same names and the same peoples that the Lord has continued to say, when I bring you to the land, I'm going to drive out the Amalekites, the Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Hittites. Like, he is naming the people that they're going to drive out. And so I think it's interesting that when they actually get there, it's like, it doesn't matter what you see. The Lord said he was going to drive them out. But it's so funny because it's their self-perception in all of that. Like in verse 33, it was like, we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seem to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seem to them. And it's like, that's how you are perceiving yourself.
Yes.
But God's made you guys into a nation. Right? And you're God's chosen people. Like, think more highly of yourself. Right?
And to go back to what you mentioned about the whole trumpet thing, like, did y'all forget that whenever you face any armies, just go ahead and blow that trumpet.
Blow your trumpet.
And there's a guarantee that you're going to defeat them. But all that went out the window.
That's good. Yeah, you was caught up. There's just this insecurity. Right? This self-consciousness in who they were. But the irony is they were never intended to be secure in themselves. It was God, right? Like the way this chapter even starts out, I was like, this is the land that I am giving you, right? That's what the Lord says. Like, I am giving you this land. It was never about you. It was about what God was going to do specifically. And so, but now I'm insecure and I'm self-conscious because of what I look like in the face of them. Versus remembering that my God is bigger anyway. It don't really matter because it was never about me in the first place. It was never about what I could do. And what I look like. That's good.
It was and it would have been different even if the Lord said, this is the land that I'm going to have you take over. Right? But I love that you said this is the land that I'm going to give you. So it's like, just receive the gift.
It's already guaranteed,
Just receive the gift.
Give it to you.
Just open your arms.
And to your point, Eric, earlier, like you mentioned it, it's like, of course we're human. Like, there's still room for you guys to lament to the Lord and be like, God, I know you said this, but this is how it looks to me. But again, give yourself and the Lord the opportunity to have that conversation amongst each other instead of just automatically discounting and like choosing not to even want to go in the promised land just because you're sitting with your own insecurity and doubts instead of taking it to the Lord.
Yeah. I was gonna call out, like, I think in trying to find which verse it was, but I know it's in chapter 14 where God tells them, like, essentially, you have tested me 10 times. Because I think, like, at this point, now that we've read it as quickly as we have, kind of going through this, like, it is clear that, like, they have doubted God's ability so many times. This same group, right? From the point of when Moses first says, hey, let my people go, right? And their labor gets harder and they immediately grumble to Moses, right? Like, they're already doubting what God is going to do till, you know, they get in front of the Red Sea. They already complain they want to go back. God can't do nothing now. Like, he's not good enough now. When they are hungry and they're looking for something, you know, first they're thirsty with the striking the rock. Oh, we're going to die of thirst out here. God can't get us water in the wilderness. Then God can't feed us. You know, and now we got manna, right? Like, it's just time and time again, every time they come face to face with something, they doubt that God can actually do it. And it's like, they get to this point where, again, they doubt not just, like, this is, I think what's different to me about this one, even to like all those before, is God has been saying the same thing about this since Abraham. Since Abraham, he has been telling these people and their forefathers, I am giving you this land. Right? And so, like, whereas, okay, I didn't tell you I was gonna give you water in the wilderness. I didn't tell you I was gonna give you manna. I told you I was gonna give you this land. I feel like God is like, all right, enough is enough. Like, you done doubted my ability time and time and time again. And I'm tired of it. I'm done. Like, his anger is like, he's like, that's it. So now all y'all gonna die. And none of y'all gonna get this gift.
Period.
For real.
Like, that's it. Like, that's it. You ain't gonna get it no way. Now, you're not even gonna receive it and receive what I'm giving you, because at this point, man, I'm tired of it.
And that was verse 22 that had the 10 times.
Thank you.
But yeah, like, the fact that these people literally, like, started grumbling, but they was like, I want to choose a leader to take us back to Egypt.
Yeah, we're gonna pick our own leader now.
That was that was wild. And again, I could see why the Lord's anger would like burn up against them, because it's like, y'all are literally like, that's just rebellion.
Yes.
Like, y'all trying to choose somebody else. Y'all said bump Moses, bump Aaron, like, and everything that God is talking about. Let's go ahead and get a new leader and like go back. Man.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation over and over again, but it blows my mind how much they really glorified their bondage.
Yes.
And just how much they kept wanting to go back to imprisonment and slavery and bondage, because they have now just, fantasized and like glorified like what that season was like. Because you're right, like I would have been okay if they were like, let's elect another leader and go establish camp in some other place. Like, we just don't, we don't want to deal with these Canaanites. We're not trying to go back to Egypt, but I don't trust where we're going. I definitely don't want to go back where we at. Let's just go find a new plan, because I don't like this plan. But for them to want to go back to Egypt, to bondage, like, it's crazy. And again, I think we do that so much in our own lives, but it's just, it's insane. That Egypt was the place they always wanted to go back to.
For sure. And I think it's like super interesting that like they were so passionate about this that they were about to stone Aaron and Moses, right? Like, not just choosing to leave, like you said, kill them. Like, let's stone them. Yeah. And then go back. But this is right after Caleb and them had told them that their protection is removed from them. Like, even all these big people that you see, like, they're not protected like we are. Yeah. Like, their protection is removed from them. The Lord is with us. Do not fear. But then I think that also, again, just shows us how they've misunderstood who the Lord is. And still don't have an understanding of this God that they serve. Because everything else seems better. He's not enough. He's not doing enough. And he can't do nothing for them.
Yeah.
I mean, the last thing interesting to me, at least in 14, is I thought it was so funny that like once God says now you can't have it, like that they want to go get it on their own.
So now you want it.
It's so childish.
Like children. Right?
Yes.
So childish. Like, okay, fine. You don't want to go there? Cool. You're not gonna get to see the land, right? Y'all all gonna die. None of y'all gonna get it. I'm gonna give it to your children instead. Oh no, wait, God, no, I want it now. Like, I want it, and we gonna go, and then they just get routed. That's what mine. I love the way that like that's how my titles is. Like, Israelite is routed. Like they just run up the score on the Israelites. Like they just get destroyed when they try to go without him to go get this land. And I don't know, man. It was just so funny to me how they just all of a sudden about face. Now they can't have it. They want to go get it themselves.
Right. And it's funny because while you were saying it, I was like, man, it seems like they really want the promise, but they don't really want God for real. Like, the promise is requiring them to really submit and be obedient to the Lord, to move when he says move, like all those different things. And all they want is the stuff, which is why they keep on reiterating like all they had in Egypt and all that stuff. Like, they just want the promise, but not the promise keeper, but not the Lord.
Yeah, I think it was super, like, you're super on point with that, because they thought that they could go without God. Yeah. Like, even when they went, like, Moses was like, wait, do not go because the Lord's not with you. Yeah. And remember, the last time the Lord told Moses that he wasn't going with him, Moses was like, nah, like, I'm not going either. Like, no deal. Like, if you don't go, I don't go. Kill me. You know, we're done here. Yep. Like, we're not leaving without you, Lord. Because he had this understanding of who God is and how much he needed him, right? And they thought, once again, like, that it's still all up to them. Right? Yep. Oh, he promised it to us, let's go take it. But like, once again, it was never about you taking the land for yourself. It was always about the Lord giving it to you. And I love how, like, in verse 18 though, like, Moses has captured the Lord's heart and like has a true understanding of this God, right? Like, the Lord is slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression. But he's not gonna pardon the guilty. Like
Yes.
he's gonna find his justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he's captured the heart of the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
but you can tell that they have still like have this like distance in relationship to who the Father really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you still see Moses literally like being that mediator between them and like praying on their behalf. Like, okay, God, like just give them another chance, give them more grace, more mercy, like asking for them to be forgiven. I think, and we've seen Moses, get angry as well with them, but the fact that he still as a leader is like, but I still want you guys to be forgiven, and I still want, like, I think that's admirable.
Yeah.
Just see time after time he just keeps continuing to be really kind of like Christ in the sense of like I'm looking to redeem. But I also do love how like as a result of this prayer, God saw something about Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
He saw Caleb's heart, his faith.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, he did say, I think this is in verse 23. He said, no one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Again, out of all these people, there was just one person.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Noah. Like, God really sees people's heart to the point where he's willing to, like, not let them die with the other people. He's like, no, you get to enter into the promised land. Like, that's special.
That is. And to that point, though, what I noticed in verse 30, he said, not one shall come into the land where I swore that I'll make you dwell, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. So I was like, wait, he didn't even include Moses in this. This is before Moses sins.
Oh.
And so he doesn't say Moses or Aaron is going to be in the promised land. He literally says just Caleb and Joshua. And I'm like, was this like a foreshadow? That,
It could be.
Like, Moses, you not going to make it?
Because I was automatically kind of counting them in a number, but you're right. Like, he did specifically say. Man.
Yeah, but I thought he was... I was trying to go back and reread it. I thought he was speaking specifically to those spies, but maybe not at this point. He's talking to all the people. Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting that they aren't... I mean, Moses is the one saying it, so maybe he's just like...
You already know.
Yeah, he's speaking, so maybe he's just like, yeah. That's interesting, though. That, he does not list those two.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think last thing, or one thing I just wanted to add, because I thought you did bring up a good point there when it came to Moses on the behalf of the people, is I think what we see, though, is that Moses' focus is still God's glory.
Yeah.
Because, like, his whole case for God is like, God, if you choose to wipe us out, it's your glory. Because he's like, I'll start all over with just you, Moses, right? He's like, I'll just start over with you and I'll make you a great nation.
Yeah.
And he's like, but it's not it's how the Egyptians will view us.
Yeah.
Or view you. View you, right? Because you delivered them just to kill them, right? Because you couldn't. He was like, it says that you couldn't give them the land that you promised them. Like, that's what it's going to look like to them, is you couldn't even do what you said you was going to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's still about God's glory and how God is viewed and glorified is at the core of everything for Moses.
Yeah,
I just thought that was it wasn't like, don't kill them all because they deserve it. It's like, don't kill them all because you deserve it.
Yeah.
Like, you deserve the glory that you're going to get from ultimately
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I love it. The Lord's like, deal, but I ain't going with them.
Yeah.
I'm going with their children.
All right, bet.
Yeah, we'll take somebody else. So, okay, so we get to the laws about kind of some offerings again, and this is really kind of starting in chapter 15. Again, some of this sounds a little similar to some things we've read before, but kind of deals with some unintentional sin as well, specifically. And, the Sabbath is kind of brought up again. Anything in those laws that you guys that maybe saw differently this time around from the last time that you've read it, before we get into these tassels, which I thought were kind of an interesting way to end the chapter?
I think it's interesting that how they, even verse 2, how he just starts it off with still honoring his promise. When you come into the land, you are to inhabit. which I'm giving to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, after all of this, like, he is still like, okay, I'm going through with this. Because I thought it was a crazy transition of like, okay, all this turmoil and destruction and back to my laws. But it was kind of like back to me. Like, okay, how to get yourself clean again. Don't forget, you gotta pardon your sins and all of this and make the sacrifices so that you can dwell with me. But also with the caveat of like, this is how you are supposed to conduct yourselves when I bring you into this land, because I will. You just didn't trust me.
Yeah.
Good.
I do appreciate just the Israelite fulfilling like what they were supposed to when it came to like seeing somebody break the Sabbath. And so like, you know, you see them hold this man accountable who they saw gathering wood on the Sabbath and presenting them to Moses and Aaron and being given instructions on what to do as a result of that. And so the man had to die. They had to take him away from the camp and stone him. But it is good. Like, we do get these glimpses of like, okay, so they haven't forgotten. They know, you know, the laws, the rules, the regulations. But again, here we have another symbol when it comes to the tassels that God like wants them to remember. It's like, clearly y'all need more reminders. And so this is where these like tassels with the blue cords come up, where he's like, in verse 39, you will have these tassels to look at, and so you will remember all the commands of the Lord, that you may obey them and not prostitute yourselves by chasing after the lust of your own hearts and eyes.
Exactly.
And I thought that like it was so interesting to see the word prostitute, because a lot of times we do look at that as a sexual thing. But like when I looked at the definition, it's like, it said to put oneself or one's talents to an unworthy or corrupt use or purpose for the sake of personal or financial gain. And that's very much so like, you know, what we do end up seeing. But again, to see how corruption and perversion could come out of those things. And God's like, no, I need y'all to remember. Not even for the quail, not even for the garlic.
Exactly. The leeks.
No, none of that.
I don't even like cucumbers.
But at the end of that, he just still reiterates, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. And I'm just like, can we just get he get any more gracious? Because by now they'd all be dead and be done with, but he's still claiming them.
We haven't heard him say that in a while, though. Remember, he used to say that like almost every time, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. That was a script. And so he's seeing like, I got to continue to remind them, I brought you out of it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of today's conversation and today's reading. And we'll pick up at chapter 16 tomorrow. I appreciate you guys joining us. Hopefully you'll come back and see us tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for the VIBEZ Daily podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or download our favorite, the VIBEZ Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the Bible.